Divorce papers were sitting on the kitchen table when I got home from work, and my husband was standing by the window with his arms crossed like he'd been rehearsing this moment all afternoon. I remember thinking the kitchen smelled like the pasta I'd left in the slow cooker that morning. I remember that detail so clearly because everything else about that moment felt surreal. The papers, his expression, the way he didn't even say hello. "I think you already know what those are," he said. I did. I'd felt it coming for months, the way you feel a storm before the sky actually changes. But seeing it in black and white on our kitchen table, next to the salt shaker and a coffee mug I hadn't put in the dishwasher yet, that was something else entirely. My name is Leah. I was 31 years old, working as a project coordinator at a mid-size architecture firm in Charlotte, North Carolina, when my marriage of 4 years ended on a Tuesday in October. My father, Gerald Whitmore, had built Whitmore Construction from a two-man operation out of his garage into one of the largest regional home building companies in the Southeast. We weren't billionaires, but we were comfortable in a way I never fully appreciated until I wasn't anymore. My husband, Colt, short for Colton, though he hated when anyone used his full name, had been charming in the way that certain men are charming when they want something from you. I don't say that to be cruel. I say it because looking back now, I can see the pattern I couldn't see when I was inside of it. He never said he loved me without needing something right after. He never showed up without an agenda. When we got married, my father gave us a wedding gift that changed the entire trajectory of what came next. He co-signed a mortgage on a house with us, a 4-bedroom Craftsman in a quiet neighborhood in Dilworth, one of the nicer parts of Charlotte. He put 30% down, which was $112,000. The deed listed all three of our names. My father, Colt, and me. At the time, I thought it was the most generous thing anyone had ever done for us. I didn't understand what it actually meant until a lawyer explained it to me 2 years later. Colt and I had been struggling for a while before the papers showed up on that table. He'd been distant, irritable, picking fights over things that didn't matter. What I spent on groceries, why I called my father too often, why I always took your dad's side on everything. I'd tried counseling. He went twice and said the therapist was biased against men. I'd tried being quieter, smaller, less opinionated. That made things worse somehow. I'd tried just waiting it out, hoping we'd find our way back to whoever we were when we first got together. But the truth was, I think he'd already made his decision long before that Tuesday in October. I just wasn't invited into that conversation. The papers asked me to sign over my share of the house to him. Clean break, his lawyer had apparently said. He'd buy out my interest and I could start fresh somewhere else. His mother, I'll call her what she was in our lives, my mother-in-law, because she never let me forget that role was hers first and mine second, had been living with us for the last 8 months. She'd moved in after minor surgery and simply never left. She had a way of occupying a space that made you feel like a guest in your own home. She reorganized my kitchen drawers. She replaced my dish towels with ones she bought at a discount store. She left her reading glasses on every flat surface in the house like she was marking territory. The night after the papers appeared on the table, she sat across from me at dinner and said, "Leah, honey, this is really the best thing for everyone." Like she'd been part of the decision. Like she was doing me a favor. I signed a counter-proposal through my own attorney saying I wasn't going anywhere yet. That's when things got ugly. Colt started texting me at odd hours, accusing me of dragging it out to hurt him. His mother would appear in the hallway when I was getting ready for work, arms crossed, watching me with the particular expression of someone who has decided you are the problem and is simply waiting for you to admit it. My brother-in-law, Colt's younger brother, Ryder, started coming around more, sitting in our living room like he lived there, whispering to Colt in the kitchen when they thought I couldn't hear. I moved into the guest bedroom. I started locking my door at night. One evening I was sitting in my car in the driveway because I needed somewhere that wasn't inside that house, and I called my father. "Dad," I said, "I don't know what I'm doing." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Are you safe?" "Yes," I said, "just miserable." "That's fixable," he said. He didn't tell me everything that night. I think he knew I wasn't ready to hear all of it. He just said to hold on, to not sign anything else without running it by him first, and to trust that things would look different in a few weeks. I didn't know what he meant. I thought he was just being a dad, comforting me, telling me it would be okay without actually knowing if it would be. About a week after that call, Colt came to me with a different set of documents. These weren't the divorce papers. These were something else, a quitclaim deed his attorney had written on the cover page. He explained in the flat, businesslike tone he'd been using with me since October that if I signed this, the house would transfer fully to him. He'd refinance, my name would be off the mortgage, and I'd be free to go. What about my father's portion? I asked. Your dad agreed to step back, Colt said. He told me he just wants what's best for you. Something about the way he said it felt wrong. My father never used the phrase, what's best for you, in that tone. He used it warmly. Colt said it like a corporate memo. But I was exhausted. I'd been sleeping in the guest room for 6 weeks. I was waking up every morning already dreading the day. My work was suffering. I'd cried in the parking garage at my office twice that month. I just wanted it to be over. I signed the quitclaim deed on a Wednesday afternoon at our kitchen table with Colt and his mother watching. No notary. No witness other than them. Colt said his attorney would handle the rest. That night, I packed 2 suitcases and moved into a short-term rental apartment near my office. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I would figure out what came next. I ordered Thai food and watched something forgettable on Netflix and cried until I fell asleep on the couch. 3 days later, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. It was my father. Leah, he said, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear all of it before you respond. I sat up on the couch. Okay. First, I never agreed to step back from anything. I never spoke to Colt about the deed. Whatever he told you I said, he made that up. The room felt very still. Second, my father continued, I've been speaking with an attorney for the past few weeks, not about the divorce, about the house. Dad, not. Let me finish. His voice was steady. When we set up that deed, I made sure certain protections were in place. The quitclaim you signed, it's not valid. A property transfer in North Carolina with multiple deed holders requires all parties to sign in front of a licensed notary. Colt didn't get my signature. He didn't get a notary. Whatever he filed, if he filed anything, won't hold up. I didn't say anything for a long moment. Why didn't you tell me this before I signed it? I finally asked. There was a pause. Because I didn't know he was going to move that fast. I thought I had more time to explain things. I'm sorry, Leah. That's on me. I asked him what happened next. He told me. I won't pretend I wasn't angry. I was furious, actually. Not just at Colt, but at myself. At how easily I'd been maneuvered. At how much I'd let exhaustion make my decisions for me. I sat in that rental apartment for an hour after the call just staring at the wall, running through every moment I could have pushed back and didn't. But I also thought about something my coworker, a woman in her late 40s who had been through her own divorce a few years before I met her, told me once. She said, Leah, the hardest part of being the person who trusts people is learning that it's not a character flaw. It's just a liability you have to manage. I thought about that a lot in the days that followed. My father's attorney had already contacted Colt's attorney. The quitclaim was defective. The transfer was not legally enforceable. My name and my father's name were still on the deed. As a joint deed holder with a significant financial stake in the property, my father had the right to initiate a partition action, a legal process that forces co-owners to either buy out the other parties or sell the property. He also, as it turned out, had been documenting for months. He'd been collecting records, bank statements showing Colt had taken a personal loan against our joint assets without my knowledge, emails between Colt and his brother discussing how to get my signature before I figured out what was going on. That phrase, before she figures out what's going on, was in a text message that Colt had sent to Ryder 6 days before he put the quitclaim in front of me. I found out about that text from my attorney, a woman named I always think of her as simply my lawyer, because that's the role she played in what became the most important fight of my life. She was sharp and methodical, and she did not like to lose. The first call my father made to Colt was calm. He told him the quitclaim was void. He offered Colt the opportunity to vacate the property voluntarily and settle the divorce with a proper mediation process. He gave him 2 weeks. Colt's response, delivered through his attorney, was that my father was overreaching and that the deed transfer would hold up in court. My father's attorney responded the same day. She cited North Carolina General Statute 47-17, the relevant notarization requirement. She attached documentation showing my father's continued legal interest in the property. She noted the unauthorized personal loan. She suggested that if Colt's attorney genuinely believed the quitclaim would hold up in court, they were welcome to find out. There was a period of about 10 days where nothing seemed to happen. I went back to work. I tried to eat regular meals. I called my father every couple of days, not always to talk about the legal situation. Sometimes just to hear a voice that didn't make me feel like I was losing my mind. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a call from Colt. He didn't say hello. He said, "You need to tell your father to back off." I was in the parking garage at work. I remember the fluorescent lights humming overhead. "I don't control my father," I said. "He's trying to destroy my life." "Colt," I took a breath. "You forged a deed transfer. You lied to me about what he agreed to. You've had your brother helping you plan this for months. That's not." I saw the texts. Silence. "You can work something out with my father's attorney," I said, "or you can go to court and let a judge sort it out. Those are your options." Then I hung up. My hands were shaking, but in a good way. The kind of shaking that comes after you finally say something you've been holding back for too long. The resolution came quickly after that, which is sometimes how it goes when someone's position is genuinely untenable. Colt agreed to vacate the property within 30 days. His mother was given 2 weeks. Ryder, who had no legal right to be there at all, was given 48 hours. The divorce itself was finalized 2 months later. Because Colt had entered the marriage with fewer assets and had been drawing on joint funds to cover a personal debt I hadn't known about, the settlement was not as clean for him as he had apparently planned. He received a portion of the equity he'd contributed through mortgage payments, minus what he owed on the unauthorized loan. It was less than he'd been counting on. I know because his attorney made that clear in a way that was probably meant to seem threatening, and instead just told me everything I needed to know. The house was eventually sold. My father and I split the proceeds from his portion. My share was enough to put a down payment on a small condo closer to downtown Charlotte, a place that was entirely mine, with no one else's name on the deed. I remember the first night I slept in that condo. I bought myself flowers, which I'd never done before, and put them on the kitchen counter. I sat on the floor because I didn't have furniture yet. I ate a sandwich and listened to the sounds of the new neighborhood, and thought about everything that had happened in the last 8 months. I thought about who I had been at the beginning of that marriage, how willing I was to make myself smaller to keep the peace, how I had watched red flags flutter past me and told myself they were just the wind. I thought about my coworkers' words, a liability you have to manage. I thought about all the women who had sat at kitchen tables and signed things they didn't fully understand because someone they trusted told them it was fine because they were exhausted and just wanted it to be over. I thought about my mother-in-law standing in that hallway every morning watching me get ready for work. I hoped she found somewhere comfortable to land. I genuinely did. But I also did not feel guilty about the fact that she no longer had access to my house. There are things I wish I'd done differently. I wish I'd involved my own attorney earlier. I wish I'd asked more questions about the original deed and what my father's name on it actually meant, legally. I wish I'd trusted the part of myself that kept saying something is wrong here. That voice that I kept overriding because the alternative felt too overwhelming to accept. But I also know that what happened to me wasn't a failure of character. It was a failure of information, and information is something you can go get. The architecture firm I work for let me take on a bigger project that spring, a mixed-use development in South End, which is the kind of work I'd been trying to get onto for 2 years. I threw myself into it completely. I stayed late. I brought in good ideas. My director told me at my review that year that I was one of the most focused people on the team. I think losing the thing you thought was your life has a way of clarifying what you actually want from it. I'm not saying the divorce was a gift. It wasn't. It was painful and humiliating, and there were weeks I didn't want to get out of bed. But on the other side of it, I found something I hadn't expected to find: myself. The version of me who reads contracts, who asks questions before she signs, who calls her lawyer before she calls her husband. The version of me who knows the difference between someone who loves you and someone who is counting on you not to look too closely. If you're sitting somewhere right now reading yourself into this story, if you recognize that kitchen table, that exhaustion, that voice that kept saying something is wrong, I want you to hear this. Trust that voice. You don't have to blow up your life to listen to it. But don't sign anything. Don't let anyone tell you what someone else agreed to without confirming it yourself. And whatever you do, please read the document before you put your name on it. The flowers I bought myself that first night in the condo were sunflowers. I keep buying them now. Every week, a new bunch on the kitchen counter. It's a small thing, but it's mine. I still think about the moment I signed that quitclaim deed. The way I held the pen without hesitating. The way I told myself it was the right thing, the mature thing, the thing that would finally end the pain. I wasn't stupid, I was just depleted, and there's a difference, even if it doesn't always feel like one from the inside. What I've come to understand is that the outcomes in my life, good and bad, were never random. Cole didn't end up losing the house because of bad luck. He ended up losing it because of choices he made deliberately, over time, with full awareness of what he was doing. He lied about what my father agreed to. He orchestrated a document transfer without a notary, without witnesses, without my father's signature. He assumed I was too exhausted to check. And when you build something on a lie that specific, the foundation doesn't just crack, it collapses completely, and usually faster than you expect. That's the thing about integrity. It's not just a moral concept. It's structural. What Colt did wasn't only wrong, it was fragile. Every deception had a seam in it, and my father's attorney found every single one. I had to look honestly at my own part in it too, not the signing. I understand now why I did that, and I've forgiven myself for it. But the years before, the way I kept choosing peace over clarity, the way I let things slide because confronting them felt harder than absorbing them. There's a version of kindness that's actually just conflict avoidance dressed up in nicer language, and I'd been living in that version for a long time. Getting smarter about my own life meant accepting that. The courage it took to stay, to not pack everything and disappear just because it was uncomfortable. That surprised me. I didn't think of myself as someone with that kind of spine, but I learned that endurance isn't about being fearless. It's about deciding that what you're fighting for is worth the discomfort of the fight. My name was on that deed. My father's money had built that down payment. I had every right to be exactly where I was, and leaving quietly would have meant handing Colt a victory he hadn't earned and didn't deserve. My lawyer told me once, near the end of it all, that the clients who do best are the ones who ask questions before they assume. She didn't mean it as a criticism. She meant it as a map. I carry that now. I read things before I sign them. I confirm what people tell me, rather than taking it on faith. I ask my father directly instead of accepting a secondhand version of what he supposedly said. Those aren't just habits I picked up from a hard divorce. They're the way I intend to move through every room, every contract, every relationship for the rest of my life. The sunflowers on my kitchen counter are still there. New ones every week. Small, entirely mine. And that is more than enough.